is Colleen.
And this is Margaret.
And we're the Cousins Weird. And we're on Terrible Trends 21.
Woohoo!
Whoop, whoop. And the thing I love best about Terrible Trends is we don't tell each other what we're doing.
No, I'm excited.
So we Margaret really likes to traumatize me.
I do.
I am way nicer than her. But this one,
oh no.
This one may be payback.
Okay.
Just saying. And the reason why I did this, my nephew told me about this. And I was like, you're lying to me. He's like, look it up. I'm telling you, look it up. So I did. And he was right. And it's horrifying. So we're going to talk about, I don't know how I should introduce this, because I'm going to give something away before I'm ready to. So we're going to talk about childbirth.
Oh no.
Okay? And centuries past, childbirth could become a life or death situation.
Even now.
Yes, and it happened often.
Yeah.
And complications came around, and they didn't have the ways of doing things like we have now. So it got bad. And it led to death of the mother and or the child or both. And babies could become stuck in the birth canal. It happens. My kid was stuck up in there for way too long. I pushed for 3.5 hours. But I'm real thankful that they didn't try what I'm going to talk about today.
Oh no.
Yeah. They didn't do C-sections then. It wasn't something they practiced.
Well, because they didn't have anesthesia.
They didn't have anesthesia and
infection.
And the infection that it caused, so they did not do those things. No. And so the baby had to come out the birth canal. There wasn't an option. You had to make this baby come out the birth canal. That's the only way to get it out.
I'm uncomfortable right now.
When the situation happened to save the mother and child, they performed a I don't know if I can say this right. Symphysiotomy. This involved cutting the cartilage that connected both sides of your pelvis. Mm-hmm. This allowed them to manually widen the birth canal.
Oh my God.
It was done without anesthetics. There was no anesthetics. It was done, then they had to push the baby out. So that was happening. They used, at the time when they first started doing this in the 1500s, they used a small knife that made it very long and extremely painful.
Oh.
And so from the 1500s to 1780, that's how they performed that procedure. I can't even say it right. The symphysiotomy. So in 1780, so this is 200 years later.
Episiotomy. Is it a symphysiotomy?
Symphysiotomy, yeah.
Oh.
2 Scottish surgeons developed a tool to make this procedure more accurate and be able to complete faster. And the tool is called a chainsaw. So, chainsaws were invented to help women in childbirth.
Oh my God.
My 14-year-old nephew told me that. I'm like, you are so full of it. That is not true. No, he was right.
Oh my God.
The chainsaw was invented to widen the birth canal.
Oh.
Because you had to deliver through the birth canal.
I heard him say that.
Yes.
It's horrifying.
Yeah. Now, the chainsaw that they invented didn't look like the big giant chainsaw you see today. Like, we're running after you with that.
I'm sorry. I'd be like, nope, the baby's staying in there. You're going to get away from me with the chainsaw, please.
When he's 20, maybe he'll be ready to come out. It's fine.
It's fine. Oh, my God.
These are more like a kitchen carving knife size. Not a big chainsaw size. They had a long chain attached with serrated teeth. No. And it had handles at both ends, like, the ones that they used to saw a tree down with. It had that.
God. It's terrible.
They would wrap the chain around the pelvic bone, and the doctor would alternate pulling on each end, cutting through the pelvis.
No. Yeah, because that's way easier
my pelvis hurts right now.
That's so much easier than a C-section.
This made it go much smoother, but still extremely painful because there's no anesthetic.
They gotta heal that up afterwards. How do you not get infections and die?
There was an orthopedist named Bernard Hine. He made improvements to the first chainsaw by adding a hand crank, and they called it a osteotome, which means bone cutter, basically.
Can you imagine being in the middle of childbirth? Because childbirth is an unpleasant experience, as it is. And
it's
then having some
alone.
asshole come up with a chain. I'm going to saw through your pelvis bone while you're in labor.
Yeah. And then you have to push it out.
Oh my God.
After that's happened.
That is awful.
Yes. So it added a hand crank. That you hold it in one hand, and it made it even faster and easier to do.
Oh, yeah.
For the doctor, not the patient.
For the doctor.
I mean, I guess faster is done, the better, but this procedure still left women with a high risk of infection, obviously.
Obviously.
There's pain, bladder injury, long-term difficulty with walking, obviously. All these things are obvious to us. Like, this is not a good idea.
No.
And then it was done this way with a chainsaw until the 19th century. Or for most of the 19th century. And around the turn of the century, it kind of lost support because hospitals started to develop better hygiene. They had general anesthesia. And C-sections became a thing. So there was less long-term risk with a C-section, obviously.
Right.
Because some stitches, and, not that I'm saying C-sections are easy, because you have healing.
Yes.
But it's better than getting your bone sawed in half in your pelvis.
I know, my God.
So I
can't get over this. It's like gonna haunt me.
I know. So the symphysiotomy has been since denounced in the United States. Like, no, we don't do that to people.
That's good. That's a good thing.
It's still used in third world countries.
No.
If a C-section can't be done. And they still would use it if there was no other option anywhere. So the osteotome actually is what they use now to cut bone. Like if they have to cut off a leg, people have to get amputations. That's the type of tool that they use.
I've seen that in movies. Where they
it's awful.
Can you imagine doing that in your awake and it's in your pelvic area?
My pelvis hurts. When I was researching it, it hurts now again talking about it. My pelvis is in pain just thinking about it.
Awful.
So in 1905, a San Francisco-based logger saw the potential of the osteotome-like device to cut through redwood trees. They were so big. They had a hard time getting through the trees. It took a lot of manpower. So he designed his patent for the endless chainsaw from the osteotome. So they took the smaller version and made it bigger. And so 100 years after the mechanical chainsaw was invented, you now have the giant chainsaws you see today. So originally they were invented for that. So, but there's more.
You only use them for wood. Don't use them for your...
Don't cut your pelvis.
No, not with the chainsaw.
So the symphysiotomy should have been kept in the Middle Ages. Like, we all agree on that, right?
Yes.
We shouldn't be doing that in the 20th century.
No.
No, because the turn of the century, that died in the United States. We didn't do that anymore. But...
Oh, no.
In Ireland, it was used in the 20th century.
No.
From 1944... to 1984.
Oh my God.
In our lifetime, 1,500 of them were performed in Ireland. Some were without the knowledge or consent of the woman.
Oh my God.
Giving birth. And they would do it as a way to make sure she could give birth easier. So she could have got one out, and then they'd cut her in half so that her next baby will come out easier. Yeah. Now, it's said that Catholicism was the reason for the use of this, I can't say, I'm not going to say it again. Thank you. Because they denounced contraception and they denounced sterilization, they wanted people to have babies. And at the time, it was thought that having more than 3 C-sections was dangerous. So the church frowned upon using them, and they used the symphysiotomy.
Yeah, because that's less dangerous for sure.
To ensure they can keep having babies. Because they didn't want them not to have babies because it's against the church. So to make sure they can keep having, because, you only can have 3 babies to do C-sections, so we're not going to have you do any C-sections. And we're just going to chop you in half, basically. It's awful.
It is awful.
Most of the women left the hospital not knowing their pelvises had been broken during childbirth. They found out decades later.
Well, back then, they would put you under when you had birth. Like, you were unconscious. Mm-hmm. So they would do this. That is terrible!
Awful. They found later, through media, after a lifelong time of chronic pain, walking difficulties, incontinence, sexual difficulties, PTSD, and other problems, that this is what happened to him. That's why this is happening to you. There is a group called SOS, Survivors of the Symphysiotomy. I say that different every time. It's fine. Organization. It was founded in 2002 to assist surviving women in receiving recognition and compensation for the pain and suffering. They sent a complaint to the United Nations Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel and Inhumane and Degrading Treatment or Punishment. So UNCAT. They submitted it in March of 2014. It outlines 24 hospitals and maternity homes across Ireland favored the procedure over cesarean sections long after the practice had been discontinued in other developing nations.
That's just awful. According
to the advocacy group, they're saying the state failed to do its duty to prevent dangerous and maverick medical practices. So yes, 100% they did.
100%.
Yeah. And I'm going to read a piece of the submission. In every case, the injuries inflicted by medical practitioners were compounded by their failure to treat them as surgical patients, and this negligence served as maximize the opening of the pelvis. So they went on, instead of what medically was said to, like, instead of the medical side of things, they went on a religious side to do these things, and that is completely horribly wrong.
Completely.
But good news is in 2014, the UN Human Rights Committee ruled that the practices were a breach of a woman's rights to freedom of torture and inhumane and degrading treatment.
Yes.
They called for the government to do an investigation. And now the government really didn't want this to happen because it looks bad on them that they were allowing this to happen in their country. Yeah. So, but they decided to pay out a symphysiotomy payment scheme. It would give survivors 40,000, I think pounds. Is it pounds?
Yeah, I think so.
To 120,000, depending on the severity of their injuries. But it only gave the women 20 days to apply for this, which wasn't enough time because they needed medical records to prove it. And the medical records, a lot of it was done before there really were good ways of keeping medical records, like in the 40s.
The 50s, and the 60s, and the 70s, the 80s even.
And a lot of these women were already dead that went through this. So the ones that were still living were like in their 70s. So they only gave them 20 days to get the hospital records, which wasn't enough. And the payments were also ex gratia, which means without admission of liable of the state. Hospitals or individual doctors.
We'll give you this money, but we're not going to admit to wrong.
Or the church. None of them could be blamed for it. And they also were waiving their rights to civil claims due to injuries. So you will give you a payment. You have to do it within 20 days of this becoming a thing. You can never sue us, and we will never say we did anything wrong. Horrible.
Yeah.
They really tried to rush this stuff in through court so that no one would, like, people...
They didn't want people to know they were doing it, so they had to pay people.
Exactly. So it basically ended up that very few women were... Women got money, but they got the lowest amount because they couldn't get all the stuff they needed.
In 10 days.
In the 20 days that was given. And like I said, a lot of the women died, but many of them spent their life in pain. Some of them, like, they had no control of their bladder because obviously it can cause damage. There was just so many things and they had no clue. And it breaks your heart to think about
these women living in pain.
And they probably never had other ones that could have other children. Because how do you do that?
Right.
Ugh, it's awful. So
the thing that they did to these women to ensure they could have more than 3 children.
Yes.
So they only had 1 children. Or they never had any more children afterwards.
And they may not have been able to because I can't imagine that was foolproof, obviously, or they wouldn't have been in pain. And to let them leave the hospital not knowing that was done to them. And you can look up more information about how much they paid out to people or, more information on what individuals talked about what happened to them. Some of them were not asleep when it happened. They thought they were being sawed in half. It's too much. I couldn't read all the things that they were saying, and I didn't want to read them all here because to me it was too much, and I didn't want to traumatize anyone too much by it.
Nope.
So the moral of this is the chainsaws were invented to help women birth children. Now, let's go back to the 1500s.
This might be the most terrible trend we've had.
Yeah.
It's pretty terrible.
1500s. It was done from the 1500s until the turn of the century in the United States.
That's a long time.
Or, well, probably not in the United States, but it was done in Europe and then brought to the United States. That's until the turn of the century. That's what they did. That was their way of getting a baby stuck in a woman's birth canal out.
And, it's like you can almost understand why they would try to think of something back in the 1500s.
Exactly.
They didn't know about anatomy, really.
No, and they were like, we need to get this baby out or they're going to die. We're trying to save their life. Basically, is what they were thinking.
Trying to save the life of the baby and the mother.
Right.
Right.
Because either one could die or both could die in the process.
Which is true. Most likely, both of them
would probably die if they didn't get them out.
Especially because even after the baby would die, you still couldn't get it out. Then you go septic and
die. Yeah. So they had to get the baby out somehow, which makes sense. But as time went on, you think they would have thought of something else?
Yeah,
I would be just like, chop me open. Yeah, they discovered the cesarean, but they didn't think that they felt like the lack of anesthetic was worse. But I'm like, you're chopping through the cartilage and bone to widen the birth canal.
Oh, God.
No!
I can't even. It's going to give me nightmares. It's
a horrible thing. And I really thought he was full of crap when he told me that. That's why. And I looked it up and I was like, oh my God, I'm doing a terrible trend. I need to traumatize Margaret.
You did.
Pay back to Margaret.
Job,
but
Queen.
If you want to read more about what happened in Ireland, which was the word, like the other stuff, like it was awful that it had to happen, but it was like out of what they had, and that's all they knew. But they had modern science in 1944 to 1984,
and they chose this for the women without their knowledge, and they didn't give them a choice.
Made their decisions based off of religious beliefs and not medical science, which is terrible. That's why we need a separation of church and state. That's why doctors need to listen to science. This is why. And that people should be able to get consent to what happens to their bodies.
Exactly.
What's that called? What's it called? When people give consent. Or they have
autonomy.
Autonomy. The people need autonomy.
They do.
Over their bodies and what happens to it. And that's why it's important.
Very important.
But that just shows you what happens when the government takes over what you can do.
It doesn't seem to do that too much with men.
Never.
It's always women.
It's always women. Because women are always the side of, they want to control us, make us a second class citizen comparison to men. Mm-hmm. And, anyway, that was the horrible, terrible trend about the history of why chainsaws were invented.
And that's going to give me nightmares. Thanks, Chloe.
Yeah, no problem.
Good job. It's about time. It's about time.
I horrified you. And my pelvis really kind of hurts.
I'm thinking about it.
I'm crossing my legs.
No. Stay away from me with your chainsaw.
I'm never going to get pregnant. I'm not now. I'm 44. So we're not getting pregnant. This shop's closed.
I had surgery, so I would not have more children because I was done.
Our shops are closed.
I had a baby at 40 and it was rough. And I'm like, okay.
Close shop.
Close up shop. We're good.
But you got to choose when you wanted to do that.
Exactly.
Well, actually, no, because they wouldn't let you do it the first time you wanted to.
Right.
But we're glad you didn't.
I'm glad too, because then I had my.
But still.
Yep.
They tell women when they cannot have their tubes tied. No.
Even now, and a lot of times, you go to get your tubes tied, and you need permission from your husband.
No.
I'm like, that's not his decision.
No, I'm the one that has to carry this baby.
My body.
Yes. No, that's wrong. And I think that's
women. I knew a girl who was in her late 20s, had 2 boys, and she's like, I don't want to have any more children. They would not give her a tubal because they said she was too young.
Too young.
It's like, what?
No, it's my choice to say no. I don't want to do this anymore.
I go, you need to go find a different doctor because I think.
And a lot of insurance companies won't pay for it either,
which is stupid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Would help them. It's way cheaper to get your tubes tied than it is to have a baby. And then the cost of the insurance of that child until they're 18, they're going to be on the insurance. You know what I mean? This could get me going on a whole thing, and we probably should talk about AnchorCon. Yes! AnchorCon. We're going to be at AnchorCon this year in Clayton from August 20th and the 21st. We're going to have a table set up. We are going to do a live show, a live recording. So there's limited space for seating. So if you want to come and see us do this live and record it, come to AnchorCon and check us out. It's going to be exciting. We're
really excited about it.
We're not sure which day we're going on, so once we know, we'll let you know.
Yeah, we're gonna make sure you're following us on Facebook and Instagram so that you can be privy. No. Every time I say privy, I think of privy parts.
And it's just not good. But
I like to say it
and then
wait for Margaret's response.
No.
Anyway, so you'll know what day we're going to be on there. But you should follow us on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and YouTube, because you can share from there, which is the best way to support us.
Yes.
Is by sharing our episodes when they come out, and you'll never miss one if you're following us, subscribing, and following it on your favorite platform.
Yes.
Also,
go to your favorite podcast platform and subscribe and like us and subscribe to us so that you get notified when we have new episodes released. And right now we're releasing on Mondays our main episode, and Thursdays our Terrible Trend.
Yes,
which you just listened to. So yeah,
which are horrifying usually, but funny sometimes.
Yes,
depending on what it is.
Sometimes both. This
one was
more horrifying. Sorry,
but I had to share because I don't think anyone know. I didn't know that.
I didn't either. That's
I was like, people need to know this.
This is the true terrible trend. It's
truly terrible. And then what they did in Ireland was absolutely horrible. Terrible trend.
Terrible.
For 40 years, mind you. 40 years they did that. Disgusting.
This century. In our lifetime. Awful.
In our parents' lifetime. Like, my dad was born in 44, so 40 years of his life, they were doing that in Ireland. I just can't. People in their 70s now, women, could very well have had that done in Ireland. They're alive in Ireland. And this just breaks my heart. I can't even stand it.
No. If you want to send us an email, you can send us your spooky story or your weird story or your weird people you know. Just send it to thecousinsweird@gmail.com.
Yeah, if you just want to say hi, too. We like that.
Yeah, say, oh, you should cover blah, 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 because it's crazy. Let us know.
Let us know. We
want to.
Yeah, we want to. But if you think we don't, we do.
We do.
Okay? We do want to cover it.
We want to cover it.
We want to hear your ideas.
Yeah.
And then if you want to support us in another way, you can go to patreon.com/thecousinsweird. And when you do that, for $1 a month, you become a freaky friend with us. And you get bonus episodes and a free gift every year. Yay. And then if you were like, no, I want to go real hardcore and really support you, it's a $5 a month donation and you become a terrible trender.
You don't get a free gift you get a free sticker with the first one, the $1.
You get a yearly gift.
You get $1, you get a sticker, and then the Freaky Friends get a sticker, and the Terrible Trenders get a sticker and a yearly gift.
Yes. And then they also get bonus episodes. They get ad-free episodes, and they get
monthly
meets, live chats with us, which, I mean, why wouldn't you want to do that? We're awesome.
We're pretty fun.
I think that's a wrap.
It is a wrap. Stay freaky.
Bye. Bye.